Hey, Jeff. Happy
Hello.
Thursday.
I don't know if it's a happy Thursday.
Well, that's a fair point. So, God bless the new king, right? Over
Yeah,
in
yeah,
England.
yeah. That's
That
right.
is,
We gotta say
that
our
is,
prayers to the
I
Queen.
know
No,
that is pretty crazy, though. Wow.
it is definitely
This
not
is,
expected, but
I know. Well, on one hand, too, like she was so senior in age that I think it's probably miraculous she's been able to reign and rule this long. But that
yeah.
is, it'll be fun to learn more about her story. So, welcome to everybody for our third. Is this our third official Americans Unite for Michigan broadcast? I'm coming to you from Jackson County, and Jeff, you're in
Oakland County.
Oakland County. So we just thought tonight there's been some big news that's happened today. And ideally, we were hoping to touch base with you guys on Labor Day, but Jeff and I are dealing with some different stuff going on. And so we're like, you know what? Let's just keep things simple. So tonight, we're just going to process through some different pieces of what's happening. One, the Supreme Court came out today with their ruling on the ballot initiatives. And we're going to hopefully make this message today informative, that you can share it with your different networks, populations. This is also on YouTube. So if you have people that are like against Facebook, but they do use YouTube, please use that. And then we're going to go through just some kind of nitty gritty tips on how to kind of get things going. Jeff, can we start kind of on a fun note? Jeff and I actually got to be in the same room this week. We had the honor of about a year and a half ago, a group of citizens and I started this effort over in Jackson County, where we're the Patriots and we were meeting, like using, just bringing in like a quality program, informing people, equipping people. And it was so fun to have a VIP with us this week, Jeff Litten.
I don't know if I would say I'm the VIP. It
Were.
was great to be there and be able to just see that group of 90 plus patriots that were engaged, energized, ready to fight for our country and ready to spend the next 61 days doing what we can to save our country and save our state, because that's what we're kind of at right now. We have 61 days and it's terrifying to think what can be at the other end of that.
So much at stake. So one exercise I thought might be fun, not fun as in haha, but fun in Amy Nerdland, is that, so we have a mission over the next 61 days, right? To mobilize as many people as possible in our different circles with truth and getting them to know the information and to vote. So if you'll grab a notepad wherever you're at right now, wherever you're watching this, and just as we start talking through some of this, jot down like who are some people that you need to reach out to. So for example, for me, like on my list, like one of the groups I need to work to get information to is the church leaders. Once we, like Jeff and I'll go through this tonight with you guys of what these ballot proposals mean. But then I need to get the information out to the different church leaders to say, again, pitching the question. We talked about this on Tuesday a little bit. I think oftentimes, Jeff, you can weigh in on this. We as conservatives think that we have to be able to like explain it all. And we're nervous about politics and we're nervous that if we bring it up, they're not going to like us. But I think you would probably agree with me on this, that if people simply asked one question of people, do you know what's on the ballot in November? That could open a door. You know, if you get answers where they're like, oh, I'm a pro Hillary Clinton person, I don't have to vote for another whatever, then you're like, okay, God bless you, have a nice day. But if people are like, I care about my Second Amendment rights, I care about parental rights, I care about transparency in education, et cetera, you're like, sit down for one moment, and let me give you the run through. Thoughts?
No, I think that's so true, because that's how you want to engage people and have that first touch point in conversation.
Wow.
Because if you don't have somewhere to connect with them too, because then you also know what's important to them. And if they say, no, I don't know what's on the, but I really value parental rights, then you know how to frame your conversation as, oh, this is why Tudor Dixon is good on parental rights. This is why Proposal 3 is going to get rid of parental rights. This is why you can frame things that you're talking about in that way that they will receive that information. Because if you are just talking about it in like such a broad scheme and you just try to go into detail after detail after detail, they're going to get so overwhelmed and kind of tune out and say, I'm good. I'll read about it later.
Yeah, agreed. Or I don't have time, and because we probably have new viewers on this, before we launch into the ballot proposals, will you just give a quick summary on why absentee ballots matter for this season?
Yeah, absentee ballots are so important because we're expecting, so absentee ballots will go out to military and overseas voters on September 24th. And then September 29th, they'll be available to all regular Michigan voters. Because of Proposal 3 from 2018, you now don't have to have a reason to vote absentee, which is going to make it so we're seeing a move towards more people voting absentee, especially in suburbs and in like city urban communities, that we're probably expecting by the middle of October 40% of people that will vote in this November election will have cast their vote. And probably by election day, it'll be up to 55%.
It's just crazy. And I think I mentioned this before, but like a mutual contact of ours told me how in one of the counties on the east side of the state, over 70% of people voted absentee. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I know I'll forget about it later, so I'll ask you this now. What about when people get, when they get stuff in the mail? First of all, let's talk about the good news. The good news is that so many people are paying attention to the election process more than they ever have. That is a win for our nation. But will you talk about the element of, if I get something in the mail that is from an organization with an application for an absentee ballot, should I be concerned? And is that normal?
So there's two different situations here. So
Okay.
we saw in 2020, the big issue was that the Secretary of State paid with taxpayer dollars to send out absentee ballot applications to every voter on the rolls across the state, which included tens and probably hundreds of thousands of people that have not voted recently, that don't live at that address anymore, and all of that stuff.
Okay.
That was a significant issue. On a normal basis, a normal election cycle, you will get from either the political party or some outside group, they can just go on the website and print off absentee ballot applications just from a big printer and mail them out to people. So you might get one from a nonpartisan group or a partisan group, just not the problem that we saw in 2020 was when it came from the Secretary of State.
Okay. So it is like, it's been happening for decades that organizations will mail an application, not the ballot, but an application, right?
Yep.
This is not a
Yep.
new thing. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's dig into, I just think that's helpful and people should inform others that if you get something in the mail, don't be thrown off on it. Just really, these organizations are utilizing public information that is their right to do, and they're trying to push their issues. So I guess props to them. Speaking of props, so segue for us to, let's talk about the bad news that came down from the Supreme Court today.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Supreme Court decided on both Proposals 2 and 3 that they don't agree with the rule of law. They agree with what they support and what they see as a good idea. So both decisions were 5-2, and they ruled that they both have to go on the ballot this fall. So that means we will be having 3 proposals on the ballot this fall, and Proposals 2 and 3 are essential that we vote no. We have to get the word out that they have to vote no, because Proposal 3 is going to allow abortion up to birth and get rid of parental consent. And there's just so many other things that it's going to do that just are horrific. And then Proposal 2, if you ever want a safe, free, and fair election ever again in the state of Michigan, you have to vote no. I am terrified for the end for Proposal 2, because the Democrats and their supporters like to say that this is voting rights or this is for democracy. Well, first things first, again, as I've mentioned before, America is not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. That's clear and simple. The founders had a reason for creating our country the way it is, because that is how it's going to survive. If people look in the history, democracies don't survive. Whether you look at Rome, whether you look at so many other democracies that have experimented, if it's a democracy, it's not going to survive, because sooner or later, the 51% is going to decide that the 49% don't matter anymore. And that's exactly what could be coming our way. But that's where this Proposal 2 just continues to want to take away that representative government aspect of how our country was set up and make it so you never have to show an ID to vote ever again. And that'll be in the Constitution. That'll allow any private individual, whether it's Mark Zuckerberg, George Soros, even from the right, the DeVosses,
right.
President Trump, anybody that has money to donate any amount of money to a local clerk and say, you should do it this way. You should run your elections this way. It's going to allow incarcerated felons to vote, which then that completely upends the game in a little community like Ionia, Michigan, where there's more people in the prison than there are in the community. Like that, they're now going to be able to vote on the prosecutor that just sentenced them. They're going to be able to vote for they could influence an election by a local township race and make it so that their person wins. Like if maybe, I mean, it's just clear and simple. There's so many problems with that proposal that it is towards the end that I will never feel safe, free, or fair with an election if that passes.
And that's coming from you, who has, I mean, you've been working hard on, like, in other words, election stuff is not new to you. You've been working hard on this. You've been in and out of important conversations. So when Jeff says this is like live or die, people really need to hear that serious call to action, because you're saying, I know the context, I see the details, and this is important.
Yep. And it's the entire reason that they announced this proposal was to go against, because we were out circulating Secure My Vote. And Secure My Vote was just finding the issues that we saw, whether it was 2020, 2016, all the way back to 2000, people have been questioning election results. So we tried to find some common sense reforms that big percentage of Michiganders support. Yeah. And we created that Secure My Vote. And then the Democrats said, no, we don't want, we believe that that's going to make it so I don't even because they want to encourage those issues to still happen, that they created this and are running this through and got the Supreme Court to rule against the rule of law.
I mean, if people don't feel heavy about this, they need to, I mean, because this is huge. I think, so one of the points that's Jeff and I've talked about, which Amy kind of likes to find the silver lining at times, like one where both of these rulings is very, very, very disappointing. But listen to what you said, that it was 5-2. And those two people that stood with the rule of law were
Brian Zara, who's up for re-election, so we need to re-elect him.
Yeah.
And Justice Viviano, who is not up for re-election, so he will still be there. So it's important. And if you have any questions about the proposals, please shoot them in the chat right now, and we'll try to answer what we can.
Yeah, and feel free to even drop them as you're watching this later, and we can do more of that. One of the silver linings that I'm choosing to see out of this is that so Proposal 2 and Proposal 3, Jeff and I we can talk later about Proposal 1. Personally, I don't think there's as much of a moral issue there as there is with the fundamentals of your freedom of voting, and then also this atrocious abortion destruction garbage. But with the 2 and 3, it makes the most powerful point that our Supreme Court matters. And so you talk to anybody and they will say, there is so much up at stake in November, and Brian Zara is not taking his race sitting down, because you take a boatload of money, and he could be a previous Supreme Court justice in a nanosecond, but he is a good man who is standing for the rule of law. And so I think while these proposals are a disaster, they're hopefully going to have all of us talking about it. But from shore to shore, may we also be talking about, wow, the significance of the Supreme Court. We've got to make sure and reelect Brian Zara and retire Bernstein and elect Hudson. Any thoughts on that?
No, it's so important. Paul Hudson and Brian Zara. You need to write down those names. You need to get the word out that we need to elect them, because we've noticed that this just shows how important our state Supreme Court is, that it is going to determine so many things in the future. And we have Richard Bernstein running for re-election on the Democrat side, and he sided against the rule of law. Let alone his family has donated $50,000 to promote the vote. So it's not like it's a conflict of interest there, which is pretty sad. And then the other Democrat that they've nominated, State Representative Kira Bolden, she's as far left progressive as you can get
Mhm.
as well, and would be another person that would side there. And then they would have a most likely 5-2 majority, or 6-1,
Mhm.
because one of our justices we can't count on that often.
And we used to have, I mean, Jeff and I, like, we've been around the block long enough that we've heard these conversations that our Supreme Court in Michigan used to be, I think, even famous in America. Like, it was just pristine for the rule of law, like the majority. We had a strong majority. And I think where we're at as a state, even, should be a wake up call to citizens that it's not just that I will challenge anybody, feel free to throw it in the comments, but for anybody that wants to put the blame back on our elected leaders, we are a nation of the people, by the people, for the people. And the fact that there is a disaster, and the fact that we've lost such a strong rule of law majority with our Supreme Court, whose fault is it? It's citizens. Citizens have not been engaged to, like, be strategic and savvy and smart, bringing the right people in. So it's a heavy matter.
So it's just so important to think, like, when you get into that ballot box, there's going to be a lot of people that will just check at the top, Republican straight ticket, and then go turn the ballot in. That means that they didn't vote for justices, whether it's the Supreme Court or your local justice. That means you didn't vote for your school board races.
Mhm.
That means you didn't vote on any of the proposals. So you have to make sure everybody knows that they need to, if they're going to do vote straight ticket, that's fine. But then they need to go to the next section and vote in the nonpartisan section, because
Yeah.
those races are just as important.
1000%. So before we go on to just kind of even some creative ideas for how people can build their momentum, will you touch on really quickly Proposal 3? I mean, again, the similar ruling, right? That's
Yep.
going to the ballot. So anything to
it's just it is, if you believe in the right to life, if you believe in not even just a more, I don't even like to say it's a moral argument. I just like to say it's a humanity argument,
Yeah,
where
that's
it's just clear and simple that this proposal will allow abortion up to birth when, like, at whether you believe, like, the 24-week viability,
right.
where if a baby's born at 24 weeks, they're able to live. But this proposal will make it so at 39 weeks and say 5 days, if someone's like, I don't want to have this baby anymore. Okay, that's okay. It's in our Constitution. That's what's going to happen. And if maybe a 17-year-old, a 16-year-old, which this is one of the darkest, hardest decisions or
Yeah.
things that people have to go through, that now that they can make this decision without ever influencing their parent, or like letting their parent know that it's going on, and
Yeah.
then that woman could be scarred for life. And the mom and dad could have helped with that and said, you know what, maybe this isn't the right decision. This is going to torment you. But if this proposal happens, parents, you're out the door. See you later.
I would say too, Jeff, I mean, weigh in on this. Like, well, first of all, so as you're talking, I'm thinking about, there are some people in our nation that are so, I mean, they understand the Constitution. They're very big, what we would call constitutionalists, right? That are passionate about the Constitution. And for some people, the argument is going to work. Hands off of our Constitution. Do not make any big changes to it unless it's small, right? And, like, thought through, like, we know there's not going to be consequences. Will you speak to the idea of how do we spread the information about this? Like, there are different talking points. There are different, like, how do people figure out what hot button is really going to hit the right market?
I think we focus on two things.
Okay.
I think there's one point on each of the proposals that you focus on and you talk to people, because it's shown in polling after polling that these two issues are going to make people that are on our side of the argument.
Okay.
So first, for Proposal 2, focus on the fact that it's going to put in the Constitution that you never have to show an ID to vote ever again. Okay. That's clear and simple. 80% of Michiganders.
In other words, don't worry about understanding all the details, but if all you do from this video is understand Proposal 2 and what you said,
is going to make it so you never have to show an ID to vote ever again.
Okay.
That's clear and simple.
Okay.
Proposal 3, we focus on the parental consent.
Okay.
I would say, let's take a step away from the abortion side of it and say, let's focus on the parental consent, because there was a article that came out in the Detroit News actually yesterday about a poll that showed that 64% of Michiganders support requiring parental consent. So if we focus on that,
Okay.
and we focus on the ID to vote, we focus
Yep.
on those two pieces, we can defeat these horrific proposals.
Okay. And I think it speaks to, not to overcomplicate it, but I will just make this caveat that I think sometimes it also depends on the audience you're speaking to. And I think Jeff and I would make the argument that these initiatives by default, we obviously have to go after our hardcore conservatives, right? To make sure they're informed. But there are some elements of this that even grounded, can I say liberals, like some that have radical viewpoints from you and I on a lot of things, there would be red flags for them if they're being fair and transparent about what this means, right? So there may be arguments like I might be talking to a liberal and maybe I can't make the argument on the abortion issue, right? We might disagree on that. Okay, save that for another day. But make the case to them that, listen, your rights as a mama and papa, I don't care if you're liberal, what you are, you should have full control over your child. That's going to change in our Constitution. Boom. Make that point, move on.
Yep. No, I think that's so important, because I mean, whether you see it in education, you see it in this abortion issue, you see it in so many things, that there's groups of people that are trying to remove that family structure, or that that parental structure that is so important to how our society works, and how it just proves when you have a 2-parent household, or when you have like people in, like parents involved, not even a 2-parent household, I would say just parents involved in the life of the children. It shows, it can help, and it can make a difference in making sure that kid grows up in a good environment and everything, and can make the right decisions and stuff. And it's just, you can see on both of these proposals the things that were thrown into them to show about how the left wants to reform and change our country into certain aspects, and that this is just another movement and another frame of mind to try to continue to push their step after step after step. And we're seeing this in Oakland County too, with a terrible transit proposal that we're having in Oakland County, that there's just, you can see that they have end goals, that this is just another step to their end goal.
Wow. Okay, so before we're done, we can totally keep talking on this, but one thing I would love to make sure we cover is, what are some creative ideas that we can help kind of nudge our friends along here on how to spread the word, how to mobilize people? What comes to mind on your end?
Well, what comes to mind on your end?
Oh, so much. I think Jeff and I were talking earlier about and I will, like Heather's helping us in the comments, remind me. One of the things I've got to work on is we got to figure out voter guides. If people are not aware, there are voter guides out there that the churches should welcome, because they're non-partisan comparative peace voter guides. And what that means is, you can go to a source. So like an organization I used to work for, and they're probably doing voter guides in target areas. I'll figure it out. But they will list that say, okay, if you put the voter guide into the right people's hands, they will vote for the pro-life people. So for example, let's say you have, let's just say, Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, right? It's an old election, but just hypothetical. You could put it into a liberal community, and they could see, wow, Joe Biden has all these endorsements, and this is where he stands. I want to vote for Joe Biden. But if you and I are strategic and we put it into the right, to what we would define the ideal hands, it will show, wait, this is who Joe Biden supports. This is what he supports, what he believes. I want to vote for what Donald Trump believes. In other words, it's not something you put into churchgoers' hands saying, vote yes for Donald Trump, vote no for Donald Trump. You're putting them information that they can compare, but you're being strategic on who you deliver to. So the power of a voter guide in your faith base, I think, is like an untapped reservoir of resources and potential. And so some grassroots, you may have the time and where you can pull together a church directory. So a collection of churches in Oakland County and Macomb County and Mecosta and Midland, wherever you're at. you could reach out to National Day of Prayer contacts and different people that you know to be a part of like that circle. And you could say, okay, I've got my list of churches. Who do I know that goes to this church? Who goes to this church? Who goes to this church? And then pick up the phone and start calling them and say, would you like a voter guide? Would you like something for your church? Well, what do you mean? Well, would your pastor be open to, or your clergy be open to putting something in the bulletin that's reminding people about, that it's election day and where to go for more information? I will work on that and help make that available in the group, but that would be a big thing. So I would tell people, if you have connections with any churches, start dropping put the bee in their bonnet now to say, okay, secretary, okay, pastor, are you aware that there's an election on November 8th and there are some major things on the ballot? If I provide you some information, would you consider putting it out to the members? Yeah. That could be huge. That could help us. Honestly, Jeff, I think the people that have done politics for eons, they would stand on their heads if they saw the faith-based turnout in record numbers for these causes, because as a majority, the faith-based is kind of, we might show up, Anyways, that's one of my thoughts.
No, that's a great idea. There's so many different aspects on trying to just reach those voters. Yeah. And getting everybody out, because so many people don't vote in midterm elections that we have to get every single conservative to go out and vote, because if not only will these proposals pass, we're gonna the state will reelect some of these terrible top of the ticket Democrats. Yeah. Or we could lose the state Senate, we could lose the state House. Like there's so much on the line that we're continuing to fight for our country and fight for our state. But if we don't do this, then if we don't all step up right now for the last 61 days, it sounds like a lot, but it's going to be over in a pinch. It's going to be quick. It's going to be, we're going to be at November 8th before we know it. And by the time you get to November 8th, 55% of people have already voted by absentee ballot. So it's time to step up now. After Labor Day is considered the general election sprint, you're going to start seeing TV commercials. I've started to see them yes, Governor Whitmer had a handful before, but I've been seeing Tom Barrett. I've been seeing John James. There's just all of these different I just saw the Right to Life one yesterday about Proposal 3. So there's just so many things that are going to be starting to happen.
Yes.
And it's time to move forward, and we've got 61 days and we have to unify and come together, because otherwise the next generation, there's nothing for them. They're going to be in a communist, socialist, Marxist country.
Yeah, so. Everybody's leaving Michigan. And I think so, and we will wrap up here quickly. Just a couple things too, you guys, that just be encouraged, and please encourage your peers as you're you see them in the coffee shop and the grocery store and picking up a daycare, just to encourage them. There is no dumb question. Jeff and I have been learning. We are blessed to have friends that are teaching us along the way. So never be afraid to contact us and say, I think this might be a silly question, but can you help me with? Because it might be something Jeff and I don't even know, honestly, and we might have to help figure it out. So do that. And then also, I would encourage you just to be praying for creativity. How is it that God would have you to be a part of this moment in history? Jeff and I were at this thing on Tuesday, and someone who's very involved in a state house race, she said she and her husband hosted a neighborhood potluck or something. And she said they went door to door, and evidently they invited people. She said some people weren't interested, but she said, that's okay. She said, I didn't used to be involved before, but you could just tell she's compelled. She's got grandkids. She's compelled. So I think just to be encouraged in that, make it a mission to pick up the phone every time your local radio station turns on and the talk show's hey, what matters to you? Well, turn it on with a witty soundbite. And then last but not least, there's your local newspapers, your local shopping guides, your local, place an ad. Why not? That says, reminder, election November 8th. Are you aware? This is on the ballot. This is on the ballot. Go here to learn more. So just to seek God for creativity.
Yeah. And I think something else that it's very important to talk about, that we try not to, because we know it's a harder thing to ask people to do. And especially in this, in this economy that we're in, but the Democrats from the top to the bottom with this out of state California, DC money that's coming in, they're starting to flood. And even like there's candidates that are state Senate level that have more money than some of our top of the ticket candidates. So if you are able to, whether it's for Tudor Dixon, Christina Caramo, Matt DePerno, or a local state Senate, state House candidate, the proposals, the main organizations that'll be fighting Proposal 3 will be the Coalition to support women, Coalition to Support Michigan Women and Children, I believe is what it's called. And then against Proposal 2 will be Secure My Vote. If you can even donate just $5 to any of these groups, any of these candidates, that makes more of a difference than you imagine. And if everybody can just support, especially if you're not able to go out and door knock or you're not able to make phone calls, we all have to step up. And that is a way that you could step up.
It's huge. And you know what? And Jeff and I were talking about this earlier. It's like, even, can you imagine Tudor Dixon, like in 24 hours or whatever, she gets people to donate $50, you know, by a certain amount. And like, it's 1,000 people to donate $50. That becomes a headline for them. That becomes like small dollar people are saying, we want Tudor Dixon. People from California are saying they want Gretchen Whitmer because they haven't lived in her state. So the little bit you can do, it boosts their morale. And you have to understand, few dollars go far. These conservatives are going to spend their money wisely. But some of you are connected with people that have the resources. So like Jeff or myself, if you're like, Amy, I could do a huge amount, but I know there's limits. How could I best spend these dollars? Let us know. If we don't know, we will help you find out. So anything else, Jeff, before we end? I know.
No, I think it's just important. And I, as I always end, and as I believe, we can continue to hear from the media or from talking heads in DC or whatever that a red wave is happening. The red wave is not going to happen. We have to make it happen. If we don't all step up for these next 61 days, less than 9 weeks, if we don't step up and do that, the red wave is not going to happen. So let's come together. Let's join hands. And let's make this red wave happen and save our country and state.
It's a good message. Make sure you guys, Heather's dropping a link in there. I think Jeff said we're gonna work to get emails out to you guys tomorrow of candidates to go after that we'd recommend. Please share this video if you guys have found this helpful at all. We're also on YouTube. Tag friends so that they can just poke in. And hopefully we love suggestions. And if there's topics you want us to dig into, but hopefully this is in a format too that you can just listen to it while you're driving. And but just know you are meant for such a time as this. If you ever felt like there was maybe a time to get involved, it is now. So we are better together. So no matter your differences, your values matter, your perspectives matter. But let's go through the nitty gritty on things on November 9th. And until November 8th, let's focus on what we agree on. So with that, it's Jeff and Amy, and we will talk to you again soon. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, everybody.